Hey guys, it's Gio here, and I'm doing something a little bit different today. I've done a lot of looking back at things and sort of like retroactive reviews, but today I'm going to talk about 2 games in one video. I know it's shocking. You probably just heard my watch go off there. I've reached some sort of target, which, you know, we love. But today we're talking about Watch Dogs 2 and Watch Dogs Legion. Full disclosure, Watch Dogs 2 is one of my favorite games ever, which you're probably thinking, what? Why? I was super hyped for Watch Dogs 1, saw that it was a disappointment, and never bothered buying it, basically. I just said, no, I'm not going to get it. Watch Dogs 2 came out, I played that, and it was probably the first open world game that I really got into, collected everything, found everything, went around the whole map, you know, fully upgraded the character, and all of that good stuff. And I think it was also one of the first 18 rated games that I ever played. So I played it when I was 16 or 17 or something, so I thought it was really cool. But I'm going to break it down into all different sections. Personally, I'm not too impressed with the story in either game, so I'm not going to spend much time on the story for either game because it's not particularly impressive, and it's also not really the main thing going on here in either game, so I don't want to tear it apart too much. But let's start with Watch Dogs 2. The story isn't amazing, it's nothing special, but it is at least light-hearted and fun, and I enjoyed the main character, Marcus, and I also enjoyed the side characters. Yeah, they're generic, there's not much to them, but they're nice. Wrench stands out to me, and when... Oh, by the way, there will be full spoilers in this video. When Horatio gets taken out by the gang, I was pretty upset. I'm not gonna lie, I quite liked Horatio, but it's fine, we move. Watch Dogs Legion has some cool missions. Some. Very few. Like, maybe 4 out of the whole game. The Sky Larson mission really sticks out to me. That was really, really fun. Basically, she has uploaded herself to the cloud. She's an AI, and you break into her house and you're trying to stop her from taking over the world. It's pretty interesting. Well, not taking over the world, but taking over London. It's pretty interesting, and things like that are really cool concepts that Legion just does not play into enough. And that's what really hurts the game. But we're going to get more and more into why I'm so hurt by Watch Dogs Legion. But yeah, the plot is just very generic. It's the setup is there's been a terrorist attack, it's pinned on DedSec, and you need to basically clear DedSec's name. You don't care. None of the side characters are interesting. One of the side characters is the villain in the end, and it's just oh, this was such a shit plot twist. There's just no need for this. And it felt really out of place, and I just didn't like it. Having no actual main character really hurts the story too. We're going to talk more about that whole mechanic / gimmick later on, but for me, it really didn't work. And I bought this game based off that mechanic and also based off hype from the sequel. I loved the Watch Dogs 2, so I thought Watch Dogs Legion is going to be amazing, you're going to be able to beat everybody, blah, 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 blah. And it just wasn't all that. But like I say, we'll get into that in a minute. Now we're going to move into the gameplay section, and we're going to talk about all the different gameplay elements. So I'm going to split the gameplay into different systems, I guess. And we're going to just talk about them all. I'm not going too in detail with this video. I just want to give some detailed explanations and some more surface level of different things that I liked and didn't like in the games. So let's just start off with the movement in both games, because this is so much better in Watch Dogs 2. The driving in both games is absolutely fine. It's not the best ever driving. GTA for me is still the game that has the best driving in an open world, obviously discounting things like open world driving games because they are leagues ahead, but we'll discount those. But yeah, the driving is pretty good in both games and I enjoyed it. I think Watch Dogs 2, and we're going to get into this more when we talk about the open world, has a better designed open world. San Francisco lends itself better to driving around really fast, whipping around corners. London, there are certain areas where that is just not happening. It's very, very difficult. But I guess that means you can get good at it if you really want to, but the driving isn't intuitive enough or good enough for you to be I really want to spend time on this driving system. It's just okay and it's fine. Player movement is 100 million% so much better in Watch Dogs 2. Controls are so much more intuitive. It's L3 to sprint like in every single other game ever, basically. And it's just really natural. Parkour in that game, you hold R2, kind of like Assassin's Creed. I know recently that's moved into you press the X button, but it's a similar sort of concept. And you just run, you vault over things, and it looks really good. It's really well animated. And I really, really enjoyed parkouring around stuff. I made an Assassin's Creed sort of reference there. It's not parkour on the level of Assassin's Creed. You're not going to be playing as Marcus and running up different buildings and stuff like that, but the parkour is there and it's fun and it lends itself well to the gameplay. Watch Dogs Legion, for some reason, feels really, really off. I mean, first of all, you sprint with R2, which, big no. I did not like that at all. Felt weird, felt wrong. you parkour with X, but the parkour isn't in like the other game where you just hold it and you do cool movements. You have to like vault over things manually and stuff. And it doesn't feel great. It feels really, really janky is the only word that I can use. I hate that word because it's so overused, but it's apt. Also, for some reason, the cover system is weird. It's X to go into cover as well as to vault over things. Circle in Watch Dogs 2 is to cover, and that feels way, way better and makes way more sense, and I don't know why they ever changed that. I didn't really like that. Watch Dogs Legion, in all fairness, plays with this interesting idea of different characters have different movement speeds. But this doesn't really go anywhere. Basically, some older characters have low mobility, and this means they can't really parkour over things very quickly, and I think sometimes they can't even take cover. But it's literally completely pointless because you'll just avoid these old characters. A lot of the time, they don't have any particularly interesting or special characteristics. There is no real draw as to why you would use them. You're just sort of like, oh, okay, you're slow, and you have a grenade launcher. This game, as we'll talk more about in the combat bit, does not encourage going in loud, so having a grenade launcher, completely useless. You don't care. Just avoid old characters, basically. Unless you're trying to have, you know, a funny time with your friends, and maybe you just all want to play as, like, old grandmas and granddads. That's fine. But let me tell you, playing through the actual game, there is very, very little need, and you're never going to want to play as these characters. So the movement across both games is okay, with Watch Dogs 2 definitely having the better movement. What about combat? Again, bear in mind, Watch Dogs 2 is one of my preferred games. But I'm being objective right now. Out of these two, Watch Dogs 2 still has the better combat. It's so weird, like, sequels are meant to be better. This game really regresses. I'll be completely honest though, the shooting isn't great in either of the games, but it's definitely much worse in Legion. And this is partially down to weapon variety and weapon choice. So in Legion, you're playing as essentially a randomized character, right? So a lot of the time you don't have an actual gun. The game really is emphasizing non-lethal. So you have non-lethal weapons which just feel absolutely awful to use. I hate them so much. When you do get a character who has a decent gun, using them in to go loud into like an enemy encampment is just stupid because you take damage so fast and you'll just die. And depending on how you're playing the game, this might lead to permadeath and you'll lose that operator forever. Full disclosure, I didn't bother with permadeath. I'm a person who I just like to play my games and enjoy them. I don't need ultra hardcore difficulty to enjoy them. So I didn't bother with permadeath. But it is there and it's a cool feature, but are you really willing to, you know, if your playstyle is go in, I don't care about stealth, loud, it's not going to work here. It's really, you're sort of told no a lot of the time. So Watch Dogs 2, it has a similar problem of the shooting isn't great and you take a lot of damage very fast. But because you're one character, it means that you have access to a wide variety of different weaponry. There's a bunch of non-lethal ones, if that's what you want to do, or there's a bunch of lethal ones. When the game came out, people really were like criticized it because of this, like, oh, ludonarrative dissonance, da-da-da-da-da. Leave it out. Like, it's a game, just enjoy yourself. If you want to go and kill a bunch of gangsters, you can. If you want to knock them all out, you can do that. It's fine. Also, I'm not going to mention stealth here. We're going to talk about that in a little minute. Let's just focus on straight up going in, killing people. But yeah, so the weapon variety isn't great, and Legion has two silenced options. It's got a silenced pistol and a silenced MP5. But again, these are only available to certain characters. So the pistol is only available, to my knowledge, to the spy class, which is really annoying because they emphasize this whole play as anyone thing. And then it feels like the game goes against that a lot of the time because it says play as everybody, play as anybody you want. And then it's like, oh, but all the useful abilities are sort of only with this particular character. So maybe just stick with this character. And honestly, you can probably play through the whole game with one, maybe two characters, if I'm entirely honest with you. And I would probably do that, but the game does actually force you to go and unlock different characters. But we'll talk more about that later. But yeah, combat overall, especially gunplay, not particularly great, but it's fine. Melee, on the other hand, in Watch Dogs 2 is very, very simple, but again, works better. Actual combat is not great, so if you come up and try and engage somebody in a straight up fist fight, it's awful. But stealth takedowns feel really great. You just press circle when he takes them down. He's got a little 8-ball on a string and it's kind of fun. I kind of liked it. But it's still not great stealth. But again, we'll get into that. Legion expands on this. Again, it's trying to say, you know, non-lethal, do this non-lethally. But the combat system is so awful. I hate melee combat in this game. Certain characters' abilities focus around melee combat and I just avoid them like the plague because I don't want to get into a melee fight. It's horrible. It feels, again, jaggedy and disjointed and it's horrible. There's like a slow-mo effect when you dodge and stuff like that to try and make it feel cool. It doesn't. It looks just a mess. I do not like it. And yeah, just don't even bother with melee combat in this game. But again though, stealth takedowns still feel and look good. So if you're playing stealthy, which you I recommend you do, then it's fine. Let's talk about the stealth across both games. So in both games, you're encouraged to play stealthily, but neither game really implements stealth that great. Again, for me, I preferred Watchdogs 2. Not necessarily because the stealth is better. I'd actually say the stealth is maybe a little bit better in Legion, but because all of the different systems in Watch Dogs 2 work better. And because of that, the stealth works better. Whereas in Legion, the systems feel disjointed. Stuff like the hacking, which we're going to get into in just a second, is awful. And so because of that, the stealth feels worse. So the reason I say it's better in Legion is because neither game lets you like move a body, for example. If you take somebody out, they're there, they're just lying there. But in Legion, you can put on an AR cloak on the enemy and you'll turn them invisible. This makes sense within the game world. So I'm kind of cool with it. It's kind of a cool idea, but it's you know, it's a bit far-fetched, but it's fine. The detection, though, seems way too quick in both games. And I was playing on normal difficulty, but definitely worse in Legion. In Legion, if you walk into an enemy camp and they even, like, side-eye you, boom, detected. It's too quick. I hate it. And you're probably going to be screaming at me, you're just incompetent. You're just bad at the game. I'm not. I've completed the whole game. Died very, very few times. It's not a hard game, but there's bits in it that are just like, why is this a thing? Like, forced rubbish weapons and things like that. I just do not like things like that. But back to the stealth. The stealth is the way you're meant to play. But again, it's really difficult to sometimes because there's drones flying about trying to find you. There are people always walking around, and the stealth options are pretty limited as it goes. You have your own AR cloak that you can put on and like hide yourself with, which is a nice idea, as well as other little gadgets that, again, I'm gonna really get into the gadgets later because I was upset with the gadget situation in this game. So you're thinking, okay, why do you prefer the stealth in Watch Dogs 2? That is because you have some set abilities and you use them however you can. Unlike Legion, where it's like, oh, this character can do this particular thing really well, and it's like, work with that, go with it. Watch Dogs 2 is like, whatever your character has got unlocked, you can use in any stealth situation, and I love that. You have set different abilities, like you can distract enemies by sending a text to their phone, you can make something explode behind them and they'll go check it out. Maybe you'll call a gang strike and gangs will turn up and start shooting and cause a massive problem. Things like that elevate the stealth. Even though, again, it's very, very simple, it makes the stealth feel so much better. Legion did have one standout feature with the stealth that I thought was really cool, but again, like everything else in Legion, poorly implemented. So some characters have certain professions. So for example, I unlocked a guy pretty early on who was a builder. He worked on a construction site. So that means that he had uniformed access. He can put on his construction site gear and then go onto a construction site and not be detected. In theory, for some reason, the detection time here is still way too quick. I would have preferred a Hitman style system where not everybody can recognize you. Certain key individuals can, and then you avoid them and that you make your way through the base like that. That doesn't happen here. It's very much just walk around, hope for the best. Movement speed is slowed down. You can't take cover. So if you're getting seen, that is basically it. You're screwed. So yeah, once again, I'm going to have to say I just preferred the stealth in Watch Dogs 2. I really wanted to love it in Legion, but I just couldn't get into it. And again, that control scheme, I don't like it. So it makes the stealth feel more disjointed and just makes it feel worse overall. So I've mentioned it a bunch of times. Let's get into it. Let's get into the hacking and why I hate it in Legion and why it's still not perfect in Watch Dogs 2, but it's, again, so much better. Also, I don't know if you guys can tell, but I'm not really reading off a script this time. Usually I write myself a little script, you know, and I go with that. This time I've just written a bunch of notes and I wanted to just keep it 100 because this is quite a personal thing to me. I was really excited for Legion and I really believed in Ubisoft, especially recently because they made some of my favorite games, man. They made Assassin's Creed Origins, which is one of my favorite games, and they made Watch Dogs 2, which was great. And I even enjoyed Ghost Recon Wildlands. The driving is awful, but overall, I kind of enjoyed the game. So I quite like Ubisoft. And also, they made Immortals, which I enjoyed. But Legion was just a massive letdown. So yeah, let's jump into the hacking. In Watch Dogs 2, they have this nice little mechanic where hacking works off batteries. You've got a little battery thing in the bottom right, and every time you do a hack, it either costs one bit of battery or bigger hacks cost more battery, right? Simple, but it works, it's effective, it's a cool way of gauging how much you can do with the hacking. Legion replaces this with a timed mechanic. I do not like this. It really limits how useful hacking is, right? Because in Watch Dogs 2, you could, maybe this is cheating, but you could spam hack people. So you'd be like, notification, notification, notification. Send it through, guys. You can sneak past them, no problem. In Legion, you can do that like to one person, and then you gotta walk and just hope that nobody else sees you. And you gotta wait for the little cooldown limit to go down. Really didn't like this. Severely affects how useful hacking is, and the gameplay is badly, negatively impacted by this, because it makes hacking, which should be the key thing of the game, feel lesser than that. And then it's like, yes, still play stealthily, but the stealth systems are not robust enough to support it without the hacking. So it just feels messy. And also, hacking in Watch Dogs 2 was more dynamic. People still had stuff to say about it, but it was definitely more dynamic than in Legion. In Legion, you could basically, you know, send a notification to somebody or jam their weapon, and that's about it. In Watch Dogs 2, you can send a gang hit, you can get somebody arrested, you can send them a notification to distract them. Sometimes you can make their phones blow up and knock them out with that. If you're in a police chase, you can be driving down a road and you get a little prompt pop up and boom, you can explode a bit of the ground and, you know, get the police off you. Things like this made the hacking feel really cool and like the world really was interconnected. And that was in San Francisco. London should have been so easy. It's even set in a futuristic version of London. They could have done so much of this, and there's none of it. Yes, there's little ramps that you can put up to stop the police, but there's no auto prompt, so when you're driving along, you'd have to like look behind you and try and do it, and that hardly ever works, unless maybe I'm just rubbish. But yeah, I didn't like it. I thought it was way worse, and you're way more limited in the things you can do with the hacking. Like I say, in Legion, it boils down to distract an enemy, jam their weapons, or sometimes lead them into a trap. This sort of stuff is in Watch Dogs 2, and you know, all the other stuff was also in Watch Dogs 2, so it really feels like they stripped down Watch Dogs 2 and they were like, yeah, this will do, this will be fine. Didn't like it, thought it was awful, and I just to this day I prefer Watch Dogs 2. I go back and play Watch Dogs 2 over Legion. But let me just talk about the gadgets and why the gadgets also feel like they've been downgraded in Legion. So gadgets are, again, like I already said, greatly downgraded in Watch Dogs Legion, which is so dumb. But let me just run through what there was in Watch Dogs 2, and then I'll explain Legion, and I'll explain to you how it's been downgraded. Watch Dogs 2 had a drone and like a little robot thing that you could zoom around inside of camps, as well as different hacks that you unlocked that had really cool effects. So you could like shut down all the power in an area, which at night is great because it turns all the lights off, or send a mass communication thing and distract everybody in an area. Things like that are really cool and applicable to a load of different situations. Watch Dogs Legion, instead of giving you this, gives you some customizable gadgets, which just don't really work. There's like a drone that you can send out that will explode, a spider bot, which is by far the best one, but this is basically just a little drone, but it can't fly. And then certain things are specific to classes. So there is one, the spy class has a watch that can shut down all of the enemy's weaponry, which sounds great, but you're barely ever going to use this. It's kind of useless in reality. So the gadgets have just been toned down so much, because in Legion, yeah, maybe there's more gadgets, but none of them are particularly useful. There's about 2 that are useful, and that's the spider bot and the AR hack that I told you about earlier, where you can shroud yourself and walk through an enemy base. Whereas in Watch Dogs 2, yeah, there were a few things, but there was more that you could do with them. You could use your drone to drop bombs on people, or just scout the area out. You could send your little robot thing in to go in and hack certain things before you even went inside, so you had access to the entire base without even setting foot yet. Things like this made Watch Dogs 2 feel like a hacking fantasy, and Legion, it has things like that, but again, it feels kind of forced, and with all these different other sort of nothing-y gadgets, it just didn't work for me. So this bit here is not a comparison between the two in a sense. It's more just talking about Legion's play as anyone mechanic. How do I feel about it? What do I think of it? It's not really a mechanic. It's a gimmick. It makes the whole story not work because you don't have a centralized character to care about. No, there's literally no interesting characters in the game apart from like the AI companion that you have, and even that is forced. And nearly all the characters you can play as are really generic. You can realistically play the entire game, like I said earlier, with like 1, maybe 2 characters at stretch. And like I said previously, the only reason you'll ever recruit more is because the game is like, oh, you should go and get an Albion guard. so you can get into this place easier. And it's like, but I don't need to. And the game's like, do it or you can't progress. And it's like, oh, okay, I guess I got to go and do it then. So you will use the mechanic, and at first it's cool. It draws you in. It's like, yeah, you want to do this, you want to play this. Until later on you realize you're redoing the same like 4 or 5 missions for different people over and over again, and none of them are particularly different. Some of them are useful. Like I said, I got that builder guy that can walk into building sites unnoticed, certain gangsters that can go into gangster areas, but again, like, none of them are particularly unique. That uniformed access thing that I was talking about earlier, that applies to a bunch of different characters. Yeah, okay, it's for different settings, but it's still the same thing, just across different characters in maybe some different areas. And again, man, like the rest of Legion, it feels lazy. The tech, really, really impressive. Well done to them for creating it. It's really cool, but I don't think it was greatly implemented. I think Watchdogs 4, I think we should get a Watchdogs 4, and it should have this same mechanic, but instead of recruiting however many people you want, it's capped at like 6 people. You can have 6 recruits. If you want to retire somebody or they die, fine, you go and recruit somebody else. And they have like very specific abilities that are specific to these characters. Smaller character pool. Maybe you can't necessarily play as everybody. You can play as like 25% of the game world. The only ones you can recruit are actually interesting characters. That would work so much better. So I think it's a cool foundation, but let's build upon it, guys. Let's make it so much better than it already is. Because like I say, the tech is amazing, and I want to see a better version of this in Watch Dogs 4. So the open world of Watch Dogs 2 is one of my favorite open worlds ever. It's one of the first big open world games that I actually got my hands on and, you know, went around and enjoyed. And it holds a sort of special place in my heart because to this day, I go back to it and I think it's so well realized. It's full of color and has loads of cool dynamic stuff always happening. So I was literally playing it today while we're, you know, recording and taking notes for this video. And I saw a guy in a truck, just a random guy, pull up on this woman in the street and just shoot her for no reason. I hacked his car and then like took him out and saw that he was an eco-terrorist. Obviously, this isn't quite an actual terrorist, but I was like, that's so crazy how his description matches what he did, and you know, that dynamic event happened, and I just thought it was really, really, really cool. Now, let's say you walk up to somebody in the street and you punch them in the face and you knock them out. Paramedics will come to where you are. They just know. Actually, no, that's the thing. People call them up. People phone and say, we need an ambulance, and paramedics come and they start taking care of the person that's been knocked out. It is so, so cool. Sometimes you'll be walking around in the open world and you'll walk up to like a gang territory and you don't even have to do anything, and there will be a war just break out between one gang and another. Stuff like that is really awesome, and it makes the open world just feel more real, you know? Like when you're walking around, you sort of feel like, okay, stuff is happening around me. I'm not just causing everything, and that's really, really nice. Basically, all of this is gone in Watch Dogs Legion, which is really, really disappointing. There is no police or gang hits that you can cause, no natural warfare between the two. Despite both gangs and police forces being very, very present, there is just no interactivity between the two. Even simple things like shops. In Watch Dogs 2, you could walk into a shop and there were multiple different shops with different varieties of clothing. Not just clothing shops, you could go to a bar and have a drink, or you could go to an auto dealership and buy a car. In Legion, you can't buy your own car. You just have to hope that you get a character which, you know, owns a car, or steal them. You can put paint jobs on cars that you own, but that's about as far as it goes. Buying clothes is really, really boring. You literally walk up to a shop storefront and you don't even get to go inside. There's like a screen, and just outside of the shop, you choose what you want to buy and you buy it. And it's like, what is this? It's so horrible. And I understand that it plays into the aesthetic of it's a futuristic world. They're taking away everything. We're more reliant on technology, but it just doesn't feel like that. It feels like it was just lazy. I did not appreciate that, and Watch Dogs 2's open world is leagues better than Legion's. Granted, Legion's world is very, very nice looking, but so is Watch Dogs 2's. So for me, the open world is just better for Watch Dogs 2. Let's just quickly talk about the graphics, because I think this is actually, interestingly, quite subjective. It really depends what you prefer. So objectively, Legion is better. Graphically, it looks better. It's got more stuff going on. It's got ray tracing. It's still capped at 30 FPS, if you're wondering, but it has ray tracing, so that's sort of the trade-off that they're going for here. There's a lot more texture detail. NPCs look better. Things like trash are just everywhere, and it's very visible, and some of it has physics that you can shoot, which is literally so irrelevant, but I just love that. I thought that was really, really cool. And you do really really get the feeling of being in Britain. Everywhere you go, there's graffiti on the walls, and there's wannabe gangsters sat on walls blasting music from boomboxes and things like that. But the problem with the graphics in Legion is not so much the graphics, it's more the setting. Having chosen London as the setting, there is very little variety between colours. Everything kind of feels a bit washed out, even in the sun. And I think I've mentioned it before, but the game looks the best at night when it's raining and all the cool graphical effects are going on. You've got the ray tracing, you've got the cool neon lights showing, things like that. They elevate this game's graphics a lot, but that isn't all the time. The rest of the time, I think it looks okay at best. Again, very detailed, good graphics, but when in comparison to Watch Dogs 2, which, like I say, objectively, the graphics are worse, but the amount of colour present in Watch Dogs 2 is stellar. Everywhere you go, something stands out to you, like Pier 39 with a giant crab structure, or you go to your HQ in San Francisco and there's beautifully painted houses with crazy graffiti on them. Nowhere in Legion stood out to me. I didn't go around Watch Dogs Legion's map and go, wow, that's a cool building, or wow, that's really cool. Whereas in Watch Dogs 2, there are several locations. Like, bear in mind, I hadn't played this game for about a year, maybe 2 years, because my disc broke, and I just bought it again because it was like £12 on PS Plus. So I bought it and jumped into the map, and straight away I was like, oh, I remember this place, I want to go here and look at this. A big one that stands out to me is the Noodle headquarters, which is this game's version of Google. Really cool, it looks awesome, loads of colour, and these visual places, these really cool, visually diverse places stand out, and you'll remember them, and you'll want to go back and do little things, and even when there's nothing left to do, you're going to want to go back and look at them, just because they're so cool. So my answer for this one is, objectively, Watch Dogs Legion looks better, it's doing more, it has ray tracing, which is awesome, but Watch Dogs 2 for me looks better visually. I prefer the visual style going on there, and I prefer all the lighting, you know, like it's bright a lot of the time and there's a lot more color. So the content in these two games, neither actually have great side content in my personal opinion. If you disagree, that's okay. Legion, I'm really hating on Legion, but Legion especially, the side content just disappointed me. I don't know what I was expecting, but like, considering Assassin's Creed Origins was so good and had pretty cool side quests in my opinion, and Valhalla had some interesting side quests. I mean, its take on side quests was different, but it had some cool, interesting ones. I just expected Legion to be more interesting, especially with this play as everyone mechanic. I was like, I wonder how that's going to play into side missions. And to be honest, it really doesn't. There's a few set side missions that are like quests, scripted. There's one with Stormzy that stands out to me, but the only reason that really stands out is because A, they got Stormzy in there, which is like, okay, that's fine, you do you. B, I played through this entire quest line once, which I didn't really enjoy. The mission's pretty shit. And then for some reason, the game didn't save my progress, and now it's telling me to do it again, which I'm just simply not going to because, like I say, it wasn't a particularly great quest. So there's a few set side missions, and then there's those endlessly generated quests, which are awful. I hate them in any game, right? Because I think they feel so gamey and forced, and I hate that. But here they're worse. They've managed to make them worse because throughout the entire map of London, they basically reuse the same few locations over and over again. You're going to be hacking into an Albion headquarters 4, 5, 6, 20 times. And it's so boring. Like, I just, in the end, I hated it. I actually texted Finton the other day while recording gameplay for this, you know, whatever we're doing now, for this comparison video. And I said to him, bro, playing this game makes me feel sick, like physically sick, because I get so little enjoyment out of it, and I just feel grimy when I play it. I hate basically everything about it, which pains me to say because I'm a big Watch Dogs fan, and Watch Dogs 2, as I've said before, one of my favourite games. But I'm going to stop hating on Legion right now with the side content. Let's just quickly talk about Watch Dogs 2's side content, which is still not great. It's fine, okay at best. There are some okay side missions, but I literally can't remember any of them. But I know that they were okay to play through. They just gave you an excuse to carry on. There's one, actually, I've just remembered one where you do rescue Aiden Pierce from the original game, but it's really not particularly interesting. You don't meet him or anything. He's just an NPC that walks away. Then, yeah, that's about it. There was another quest line that I don't know if it's really a side quest though. It's more of like a thing that you can just do in the open world of being an Uber driver, which sounds really rubbish, but it was surprisingly fun. But yeah, so the side content in these games is nothing to write home about. It's nothing particularly impressive. You're not going to play it and be like, wow, I need to replay that. But at least you can replay it. Watch Dogs 2 lets you replay missions. So if you get bored of just messing about in the open world, you can replay missions, or you can just start a new game, obviously. Legion, you can't replay missions to my knowledge. There's nowhere I can see where you can do that. And if you want to start a new game, it deletes your old save data. I know Watch Dogs 2 does that too, but I feel like in Legion, it's particularly egregious because, like I say, you can't replay missions. So if you want to go through anything again, you do have to start all over again and grind out the whole game all over again, which is awful. Aside from that, there's stuff in both games that you can find in the open world, like little collectibles, which are useless, and tech points. I think we've covered that already. You use those to upgrade. There's a bunch of upgrades in both games. The upgrades, just by nature, are better in Watch Dogs 2 because the stuff that you have is better, whereas in Legion, the stuff that you have is pretty threadbare, pretty awful. I hated it. I really don't like this game. I don't know if you guys can tell that, but it just pains me. So that's everything, guys. I think you can pretty clearly tell it. In my opinion, Watch Dogs 2 is the superior game. Just full disclosure, just because I don't like Legion doesn't mean you won't, okay? You might think Legion looks great, I love this mechanic, That is absolutely fine. I'm not here to shit on your enjoyment of the game. I'm just here to tell you my experience of the game, and personally, I'd say don't waste your money. I'm somebody who paid full price for the game at launch, played it on the PS4 and on the PS5, didn't enjoy it across either system. It's definitely superior on next-gen consoles because obviously the load times are still stupid. They're still very long, but they are improved on next-gen consoles. I'd love to get my hands on an Xbox Series X. I'm really looking for one so that I could maybe test the load times across PS5 and Series X. So when I do eventually get a Series X, I'll be doing that. But yeah, in all honesty, I did not enjoy Legion. Watch Dogs 2 to this day holds up, still a great game, has great mechanics, okay characters, and plenty of stuff to do. I definitely recommend that game. You can buy it now for a cheaper price too. Like I said, I got it for £12. That was discounted, but if that was digital as well. So if you buy it physical, you'll get it for like a £5 probably somewhere. So yeah, thank you all for watching. Really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this little different format that I did today. Like I said, much less scripted, so I'm probably gonna have to clean this audio up a lot. There was a lot of and ahhing, which is awful, so I'll be cleaning all that up. But thank you all so much for listening. Hopefully we'll see you all next time on the next thing that we do on the channel, whatever that may be. We're always full of surprises. Make sure you like, subscribe so that you're always ready for new content, and please share the video. That really helps out. But yeah, we'll see you all next time. Thank you for watching.